The following is a conversation with Eric Weinstein, the third time we've spoken on this podcast. He is the wise turtle, Master Oogway to my Kung Fu Panda, one of my favorite people to talk to in this world. A complicated and fascinating mind that I'm grateful to have the chance to accompany in exploring this world through conversation, on this podcast and on his, the latter called The Portal. Quick mention of each sponsor, followed by some thoughts related to the episode. First is Grammarly, a service I use in my writing to check spelling, grammar, sentence structure, and readability. Second is Sunbasket, a meal delivery service I use to add healthy variety into my culinary life. Third is SEMrush, the most advanced SEO optimization tool I've ever come across. I don't like looking at numbers, but somebody should. It helps you make good decisions. And finally, ExpressVPN, the VPN I've used for many years to protect my privacy on the internet. Please check out these sponsors in the description to get a discount and to support this podcast. As a side note, let me say that wherever this life takes me, I'm drawn to the possibility of having many more conversations with Eric through the years. I think we have just the right kind of contrasting worldviews and a deep respect and appreciation of each other's life stories that creates for this magical experience in the realm of conversation that feels like we're always looking for something that we never quite find, but are always better for having tried. I'm not sure how or why the universe has connected Eric and me, but it did. And I would be a fool not to trust its judgment and enjoy the journey. If somehow you like this podcast, please subscribe on YouTube, review it with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, follow on Spotify, support it on Patreon, or connect with me on Twitter at Lex Fridman. And now, here's my conversation with Eric Weinstein. Who's the greatest musician of all time, would you say? We were just off camera talking about Eddie Van Halen. He unfortunately passed away.
Who's the greatest musician of all time?
Yeah.
Jonathan Richman.
Who's that?
It's a weird question, so I'm going to give you a weird answer. It's not because...
Thank you.
Okay. Jonathan Richman, the reason I'm picking on him is that he had a quote. He was the front man of a group called the Modern Lovers. And his quote was something like, "We have to be prepared to play music when our instruments are broken, the electricity's out, and it's raining," something like that. And I thought that quote was very interesting because what it said was, you have to be able to strip this thing down farther and farther back to get to something that is intrinsically musical. So we were having a conversation just now about virtuosity. We're talking about Eddie Van Halen and his recent passing. And that affected me emotionally. I don't know whether it affected you. I was never a Van Halen, the group fan, but I revered Eddie Van Halen's capacity for innovation. I saw him like, Rodney Mullen, the skateboarder. I had dreamed of having the two of them on the same podcast just to talk about what it's like to totally discontinuously innovate.
And you posted a video of Spanish Fly, I think, and saying like, I didn't know the guitar could make those kinds of sounds. Like, what is this voodoo magic?
What is it? Well, this is the thing, right? The arpeggios that he did on a single string are so fast, and the attacks from the hammer-ons, when they go at light speed as he did, particularly, and the reason I chose that is that I wanted to strip out the electronics, because part of the claim is that he's a rock musician, and a lot of the innovations had to do with things peculiar to sort of the electrified setup. His use of the whammy bar, for example, or the Frankenstrat that he built from different pieces, right? All of those aspects, in my opinion, are just dwarfed by his innovation and his musicianship. And that's why I chose Spanish Fly, because everyone, of course, will go to something like Eruption or Running with the Devil, which is the first things that they heard that let them know that there was a new force erupting out of Southern California that was Eddie Van Halen, right? I mean, I'm in love with the story of it.
You're often so poetic about music. Like, it clearly touches your soul on many levels. What is that? Is it deeper than just rocking out with the in your convertible Corvette 69? I imagine Eric Weinstein just driving down the California highways, blasting some kind of music. Is it just like being able to be carefree for moments of time, or is there something more fundamental that connects to like the theory of everything in physics and life and all of that?
How often do you have the chance, for example, to hear mathematics performed as you do in Bach, right? Like something with that kind of precision and elegance that can't really be grasped, where, to go back to Leonard Cohen's famous line, the baffled king composing, right?
Such a good song.
It's such a good song, but it's also like individual verses of that song are insanely important. The baffled king is how we often make music. We don't really understand what did we just do that broke that person's heart sitting on the couch, right? And so it's a very strange thing that you should be able to have. Think of it like you're a computer. You've got this weird open music port, port 37.8, like it's not even supposed to be there. And suddenly somebody starts playing a guitar and they're making you feel things. Or, like in particular instruments like the violin, it's so difficult. It's so unforgiving. And when it gives up its secrets, it just, it wraps its fingers around your heart and won't let go. Sometimes I talk about head, heart, and loins. When something can grab your head, heart, and your loins at the same moment and integrate them, there are very few opportunities to live like that. And if you think about Eddie Van Halen, as far as your head, the musical innovations and the fact that he was drawing directly from the classical canon, really speaks to the idea that maybe rock is what somebody like Jimi Hendrix saw it as being, an infinitely extensible medium. In terms of heart, I always notice the smile on his face. It's painful to look at an Eddie Van Halen solo now. Like sometimes you'll see the cigarette dripping off the side of his mouth and you're like, that's going to fucking kill you. And I'm not even worried about it for you. I'm worried about it for me. You're going to rob. I don't even need to hear you play another note. I just like knowing that you're in the world, that there is somebody that everyone looks to, that nobody, I've never heard a guitarist say, I don't know. I think he was okay. Like I've never heard it. You can hate him, but you still think he was a genius. There are very few people like that in the world. And then loins, those leaps, that guy was incredibly good looking. And, skin tight pants, super athleticism.
Yeah.
He completely owned the male sexuality of the stage, both being the completely dominant, sort of mythical alpha male. I hate that expression, but there you are. But also this kind of little boy with this mischievous smirk and, the sense that it all came together. How could you not eat that up?
You could just imagine the millions of like young teenage boys who are just like playing air guitar in their room. Just that, basically dreaming of being that kind of god. The most perfect example of what a human being can be. Yeah. It's fascinating to think.
It is. And then, as in many of the cases with these bands, you get these multiple talents in the same outfit. And I think that the original configuration with David Lee Roth, David Lee Roth is such a hot mess at all times.
I would love you to talk to David Lee Roth. Like if that dance would be just gorgeous.
I don't know.
Can you handle it? Can you ride that?
Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not, because I think he's I get the feeling that he's very smart and very dysregulated. And I don't know that I could
like bring him down to earth for a moment.
Well, I can also get pretty dysregulated,
Yeah.
And so I don't know whether it could be magic. It could be a shit show. I don't know what you thought of his appearance on Rogan. That was an interesting one.
I loved it, but Joe does this sometimes. Sometimes he just sits back and listens, and he just lets like the music play, which works really well. I think you have a chance to kind of jump into the chaos.
I care too.
And then you'll just start. And the places you'll go, you may not even talk about music for like hours. It might just go to this, because he, I think, lives in Japan. Like there's a weird, he's been in
like an EMT after he was a rock star. He chose to become I don't know, it like
there's depth to that man that hasn't been explored by him either. So that'll be an exciting conversation. Can we go back to Leonard Cohen?
Yeah.
Can we just the things I feel when I listen to Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen or anything by him really, but that one,
Do you really want to get into it?
let's go. What does that song mean to you? Is it love?
Oh boy. Well, first of all, it's mystery. Like it starts off about mystery. So what are you doing? You're doing this alternation between the two chords, so three notes at the same time. One is called the tonic, or you have the major and the relative minor, and he's alternating between them. There's only one note of difference between those two chords. One of them would be feeling sad. One of them would be more joyous, typically described. And so by altering one note, it's the minimal amount to take you back and forth between joy and happiness as that's encoded in us. So he starts off with that. I heard there was a scene. David played the Please the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do you? That's really interesting because he's using this technique called bathos, right? So the alternation between the sublime and kind of the guttural or ridiculous or the mundane, right? Mm-hmm. So he's like...
but there's a bitterness to it too. Is it just play?
Well, the way I hear it, again, a great song allows for different interpretations. You happen to be asking me, so I'm going to impart some stuff that probably isn't in the song, but why it speaks to me, that's what makes it great. Yeah. The way I hear it is he doesn't believe the audience. You don't really care for music, do you? Then what are you doing listening to this, you stupid idiots? Yeah. Of course you care for music. You're too cool to care. So I see through you and screw you. That's like that's the energy I get out of it. Then he does this weird thing. It goes like this is where he should put the description of where he is in the chord progression, which is the tonic, right? It goes like this. And then he hits the fourth and the fifth, which are the two other major elements, the subdominant and the dominant, in functional harmony. So he's describing the chord progression in real time in the lyrics. And there's two ways this can come about in other songs. Like we had this example of Every Time We Say Goodbye. Do you know the song? Every time we say goodbye. No, I think it was Cole Porter, maybe, or Gershwin, maybe Porter. I don't know. I cry a little. There is no love song finer, but how strange the change from major to minor. Right? Like it's beautiful use. Wow. Then there's times when it's duplicitous. So, for example, you'll have. I guess my favorite examples of this are Johnny Cash's Ring of Fire. Mm-hmm. I fell into a burning ring of fire. Then what does he do with the lyrics in the tune? I went down, down, down. He goes up. Yeah. Right. And so the idea is like, oh, okay, that was a head fake. Yeah. Right. And another one of these, is Nina Simone's Feeling Good. Well, okay. So what do you get at? Birds flying high. You know how I feel. And sun up in the sky. You know how I feel.
That woman's voice.
She
doesn't give a damn, and yet she's
and I'm feeling it. But then what's the da-dum, da-dum?
Yeah.
It's like heavy stripping music. It's you're not in a good place. You're probably in some strip club with the last of your money. You're drinking lousy beer, some bad situation.
Yeah.
And she's feeling good? No, it's funereal. It's oppressive, right?
I never thought of that song that way. Wow.
Well, you think of it as joyous?
Yeah.
No. If you think about it, contrast it with Ray Charles, for example. Do you know Lonely Avenue? He goes, well, my room has got two windows, but the sunshine never comes through. It's really depressed. It's the same sort of vibe as Nina, but she's claiming that she's in great shape. So she's like a good case of the unreliable narrator. Leonard Cohen, to me, is talking about the unreliable audience that's too cool to be with the performer on stage. There are things that go with the music, like the Cole Porter stuff, that go against, like the Johnny Cash. I think these are the games that musicians play that the rest of us only sort of notice subliminally. Okay? Fourth, the fifth. Then he should say something about the relative minor or he's giving you the secret, the baffled king. Completely. In other words, he doesn't know why it works. Yeah. Did Pachelbel know why Pachelbel's canon would work?
Yeah.
It was a discovery. That's the whole thing. Like some music is discovered and some music is invented. And he's talking about a musical discovery. He's talking about the Pythagorean power of the wave equation, and then superimpose, like, there's two genius intellectual concepts behind music, one of which is the wave equation. Usually we solve it for a one-dimensional medium because we're talking about strings or air columns. Occasionally you're talking about things like handpans or steel drums or metallophones or gamelons, whatever. And those have a wave equation too that's much more chaotic. The other equation is this crazy thing that 2 to the 19/12 is almost exactly equal to 3, which is what gave us even temperament. And so the tension between those two things is, in fact, one of these most beautiful stories. Inside of that system, that formula of the baffled king is a discovery. He's not really composing it. The reason he's baffled, imagine that you took like a little brush and you started brushing off, a pyramid under the sands. You might think that you created the pyramid by your brushing, but in fact, somebody else did it. That's why you're baffled, right?
That's beautifully put. You're right. And as creating one of the greatest songs of all time, and as he's doing it, he's baffled. And it's meta. He's within the song.
And Leonard is baffled, is my contention. But he knows enough to know that he's baffled, right? And so the idea is that he is composing. He has the audacity to compose as David. He's echoing David at a minimum. And then in a later song, which I really wish we would discuss, that's totally dystopic, and you will not like it at all, is The Future, which contains this line that I think I used in my episode with Roger Penrose on The Portal. Note the subtle plug.
The portal.
I'm the little Jew that wrote the Bible. So there is this way in which Leonard Cohen, I think, is constantly coming to the idea of being a biblical-like scribe. And I think this is one of the great things that, you see Dylan doing this with All Along the Watchtower. You saw Warren Zevon, who we should talk much more about, doing this with a song called I Was in the House When the House Burned Down. Do you know this thing?
Mm-mm. No, this is embarrassing.
Oh, sweetheart. This is a great day.
Darling.
Warren Zevon is one of the most important songwriters of our time. And he's been largely forgotten by this generation. But, Bob Dylan would sing one of his songs in tribute. I've heard Bob Dylan, very small number of songwriters really move him. Woody Guthrie, Gordon Lightfoot, and Warren Zevon. By the way, Bob Dylan, if you're out there, appear on either one of our podcasts. We need to get your voice into a new medium for a new group.
Definitely.
This is a time for Bob Dylan, my friend. Honestly, you've been doing an amazing job in this space. One of the reasons I'm super excited to do this podcast again is that I've learned some things about what I don't do well. And I also have sort of struggled with the question, should I do those things better? Because what if it's, I always use the same example of the fitted sheet. When you're trying to put a queen size fitted sheet on a king size mattress, he's like, okay, I got that corner squared away. And then you get another corner that pops off and they have to go back around. I wonder whether I can improve my style in the ways in which, I think it's just a recognition of a difference. You do a better job of getting to the soul of a really top intellectual guest and making them accessible and presenting them as themselves for a huge number of people. And I'd give my eye tooth to be able to do that.
Hey, do you ever think about this? Like, because I think about what is the greatest conversation I'll ever have. Like in a sense, The Portal, not to reduce it to anything, but there will be the greatest conversation. You may have already had it, but it's very possible if enough people like me can keep twisting your arm to keep doing The Portal, please, there'll be an amazing conversation. One of the questions that I ask myself is like, who is the person that I'm especially equipped? For some reason, I'm convinced on Putin. There's something in my head that says I can do this man better than anyone else in this world. I got this thought in my head about it. I don't know why. And I'm convinced, but I think the universe works in that way. Like if it tells you, it's going to happen.
The way I would say it is that almost everybody who becomes a Supreme Court justice believes at a very early age they're going to become a Supreme Court justice. Many people believe at an early age that they can do it, don't get there. But of those who get there, almost all of them had this sort of, well, I call it pathological self-confidence. And I do think you have pathological self-confidence and you also have humility. And most people would hear those as a contradiction. I think that you would not be able to get away with what you do if you didn't have the humility. And so I think, the great danger is that your equation becomes unbalanced, that you either lose the humility or you lose the humility overwhelms the ego and the drive, because right now you've got a Mexican standoff in your mind and the rest of us are just benefiting.
That's beautifully put.
My Mexican standoffs aren't as stable as yours. It's all Reservoir Dogs all the time.
Yeah.
But actually, the person who that describes is Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel thinks more. People always say, like, what does Peter think about X, Y, and Z, P, and Q? It's like, well, do you want communist Peter? Do you want hyper-capitalist Peter?
Minds in there.
Oh my God, right? On everything. That's why he's successful, is that he's got all these minds fighting each other. And so when people say Peter is this or Peter is that, I just laugh, because nobody who knows him would describe him as having thoughts at the level that people are claiming. And I do think that, in my case, there's also pathological epistemic humility. Like, just, I know how little I can do in one life. I know how many things I've screwed up. I know how many things I've got wrong. And on the other hand, I know that if not, it's like Hillel's questions, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? If I'm only for myself, what am I? If not now, when? At some level, there's a question about, if I don't decide that someone is capable and that somebody is me, and if I apply that to everyone else on the planet, then nobody's going to do anything. And so I do think that one of the things that people like you and I get is, who are you to say that? Right. F that, man. Just sign me up for some Dunning-Kruger.
Yeah, but it's multiple minds, like you said. Like this morning, I was feeling so good and confident I couldn't think no wrong. And I remember last night clearly thinking that I'm the dumbest human who's ever lived.
Yeah,
and
great.
Nothing I've ever said is worth anything. What the fuck am I doing with my life? Why am I scared? I was terrified of this conversation. Who the hell am I?
This conversation?
Because I'm an idiot. And because,
Lex.
But no. But this morning,
Aha.
I was the baddest motherfucker who's ever walked this earth. So I was very conscious. I think it was the coffee. I'm not sure. Maybe some sleep.
This sounds very Russian, and it involves multiple beverages, some of them being alcoholic, others containing caffeine.
There's, in fact, I can't share the story behind it, but there is a bottle of vodka in the fridge.
Okay.
So, I
should have hit you for coffee, because this is a morning show here.
So I put out a call that we get a chance to have this conversation, and people ask these wonderful questions. A few people asked about depression and suicide. This is a Russian program, so we have to go there. And I think about Leonard Cohen, and one of the things that always kind of broke my heart and kind of suffocated the hope I have for just I don't know, for love in a person's life, is to hear how much depression was a part of Leonard Cohen's life and how much he suffered. I guess one way, I'm not sure where we can go with this question, but do you think about the places that the mind can go, like these dark places?
Yeah.
Is there something like where the only escape out is suicide, for example? That's the darkest version of it?
I really think suicide is a big place, and suicidal ideation and self-harm, and we don't talk a lot about it. It's a similar problem to trying to talk about trans. These are umbrella categories, and if the commonality is that somebody harms themselves, but we don't know whether that's coming because of a problem in brain chemistry, because of an event in their life, whether evolutionary programming for suicide is weirdly normal, whether or not it might have a religious motivation. There's too many different forms of self-harm. It's something like the 10th largest killer or thereabouts. And I think that, you can look at it from different angles. I'm old enough to have, had Pete Seeger come to my college when I was at university, and to watch his good humor in the face of all adversity. I think of Odetta. I used to go to Odetta concerts. I don't know if you know who she is. Mm-hmm. Okay, this is going to be one of the better days of your life. Check out Odetta. When we're done with the interview. She was a civil rights figure, but also just had a profound voice and great musicianship. These people were in the struggle, right? And they saw lots of bad things happen, and they kept their humor about them. And, the thing is that you can take on the Weltschmerz, the pain of the planet, or you can try to do something else, which is to be a happy warrior, even if the odds are terrible and the cost of failure is catastrophic.
So even when surrounded by darkness. But the thing is with Leonard Cohen is he created such beautiful music, and yet it's like Anthony Bourdain, the same. And yet they go to this dark place. And it's easy to say it's just biochemistry.
No, there's a linkage between this highly generative, creative side and, in some cases, dark depression. In other cases, not. So you can't say that it's tied, that genius and madness are always, co-traveling, or that beauty and pain are one and the same. What you can say is that there's a cluster of people that tell you that for that cluster, there is a relationship between the darkness and the beauty. And I do think that in part, it's squaring circles that can't be squared. We were just talking before about the inability to serve two perfect systems, the perfect system of the wave equation and the perfect system of even temperament. They're both perfect. They're not compatible. And once you realize that there is perfection and an inability to make contact with perfection, I think, you recognize that there is no solution to this world.
Yeah. That's weird with the poets and musicians. Do you want to say this is a particular thing that you do, but then there's Spanish Fly by Van Halen. And then you realize, well,
what do you get out of Spanish Fly by Eddie Van Halen? I think it's very singular because of the fact that it's purely acoustic.
For some reason, I couldn't imagine Eddie Van Halen separate from the band in front of thousands of people just screaming and rocking out with lights everywhere. And Spanish Fly made me think it made me imagine him sitting alone on a couch in a room.
I think that's who he was. I really do. I mean, it's, believe me, I get it. Yeah. He was a rock star. He was a rock guy. Got it. I'm almost positive that you can't get to where he got to without being a complete introvert.
Yeah, it made me imagine that there's some half-naked supermodel walking around hoping that they can, do their thing together. And Eddie's completely disinterested. He'd be with the guitar.
Right?
Yeah.
Because honestly, at some level, in one case, maybe you're conquesting, maybe you're pursuing love and romance. In the other case, you're